How are we doing, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Wolf, and welcome to the very first episode of my Path of Exile Ultimate Survival Guide, updated for 2018. Now, I have done an Ultimate Beginner's Guide, which I'm sure you can see via a card, or you may have already seen, but that only covers very specific things of the game, and as much as I can do videos over and over on topics and explain how to do things on stream over and over, there's a different statement for literally being able to show you. A lot of people don't learn from just watching a video or just reading something. They want to see it literally done or do it themselves, to which I feel this series can fill that gap in perfectly fine. To which I hope to be able to go from the very start of the game, hopefully all the way to as deep into Endgame as I can physically get, with a very simple build while explaining as many concepts to you in Path of Exile as I possibly can. Now, that being said, I'm going to be doing this in standard solo self-found, as it allows us to not really interact with the league mechanics because these may change from league to league, and I can keep the information consistent with the base game of Path of Exile, and you can tailor it to whatever you plan to do. Now, with this series, I plan to teach you as much as humanly possible, and thus I have a kind of build that I've devised. I'm really going in without a build, just with a knowledgeable idea and a class that I know quite a bit about. Now, with that being said, let's start in here, and I will start explaining some glorious things to you. And I will warn you, I'm doing this all in one take, because these sorts of things in a game that's about progression, you can't really go back and edit and cut things out and all this sort of stuff. So I may make a blunder of words here and there, and I may screw something up. If that's the case, I do apologize. I'm probably doing like a 30+ minute live commentary. I'm trying to keep it interesting, may wane in certain scenarios. But I do hope that I can give you enough information that you can make your way through Path of Exile and have a grand old time. Now, aside from the 2-minute intro, let's start explaining some stuff, shall we? So, solo self-found. This is a mode that essentially makes it so you are playing by yourself and you can't trade with anyone. You can't trade, you can't group, you can't do that sort of stuff. You can whisper to anyone on your friends list and that sort of thing, which is quite nice. But this means that you can't, well, trade with people, which is a lot of Path of Exile in a way. If you play in Trade League, you can basically gear your character the moment you hit endgame, just by trading to people with the little bit of currency that you found, and it will invalidate a lot of the topics that I'm trying to show you. I'm going to show you everything that I can in solo self-found, because if I can do it here, then you can do it in Trade League, where you can just buy stuff. And if you know how to do things in solo self-found, you're not going to have any problem in Path of Exile whatsoever. So we're going to go into standard solo self-found. Now, the class that I'm going to be going for is right here, which is my personal favorite of Marauder. You can play any of these classes here you would like to, but for the purpose of this video, I will be rolling with a Marauder. I'm going to be playing a Sunder Juggernaut, for those of you curious who've already played Path of Exile and are just tuning in for, I don't know, maybe you enjoy me or want to see if I actually get this series correct. I'll be playing a Sunder Juggernaut with a focus on survivability. So we're going to click this fella. Let's name our character. What should we call it? Let's see. Does that fit? That fits. I'll take it. I will take it. And then we go into the very first loading screen of Path of Exile, and we wake up on the beach. Alright, now, there's a few things that you're going to want to do the moment that you kind of hit the ground running. The first thing I'm going to do is change my left click from default attack to move only. This makes it so that after I get up off the ground here, and he does his little spattering cough, I can move around with just my left click. Now, you think this wouldn't be that effective, but walking up to a mob and accidentally whacking it when there's a giant pack in front of you is not something you want to be doing. Making your right click default attack is going to be the best go-to solution. Now, a few more things we're going to do is we're going to go into options. Personally, I'm going to turn my sound down a little bit because that voice was very fucking loud at the start, and I apologize for that. But then we're going to go into UI. You can do your graphics settings as you would like, but the first thing you're going to notice that's different from my settings to your settings is landscape and map transparency. So there's a few things that I would recommend you turn on here. First of all, everything I have, pretty much. I'm going to turn screen shake off because some people really don't like that. It makes them sick or whatever. So I'll do that for the purpose of the video. But make sure you turn quest tracking on. Show corner map is exceptional. You get your mini map in the top right. Auto center map is very nice because if you hit tab, it will center your map on your character. This is exceptional. You can move it around using the arrow keys, but because of the way I do my keybind setup, I have a Razor Naga and my arrow keys are bound on it because I'm a fucking idiot. Other than that, I would change the landscape and map transparency to be something akin to mine. This is essentially a Diablo 3 style layout, and that's just what I enjoy. I've played a lot of Diablo 3, and transitioning it over here, I didn't like the way the map was set up originally. Tailor it to your own tastes, but this is my recommendation. Always highlight is quite nice, then it's always highlighted like this. Show sockets is quite nice as well. We'll get into that once we start getting socketed items, but trust me, turn this on. When people don't have this on and I'm watching a video, it drives me to the fucking wall. Turn this on. And then the other things I would recommend is show flask buffs, aura icons, life and mana levels over top, just for reasoning later when I start explaining numbers and math to you. It will make things a lot easier. Full descriptions, always nice. And then other than that, you can kind of fiddle with this sort of stuff as you would like. I have the health bar over top of me, which is in this list somewhere, if I remember correctly. Somewhere here. I would turn that on if you'd like it. I just personally like it as I'm able to stare at the center of my screen and not look down here while I'm dealing with shit here, right? It's quite nice. And you'll have auto equip on by default. For those of you who are semi-veterans of Path of Exile, I turned this off once I played my first Facebreaker character, because that shit got very annoying. If you're playing for the first time, you can leave auto equip on just fine. Okay. Now the one last thing that I have is a loot filter. Now this is going to make it so that this looks very different. If I show you a couple of my different ones, for example, if I were to play with my strict endgame filter on, the weapon becomes very, very small. You can use these sorts of things to tailor the way that the game looks and items look. You see the background's different. If I go to this one, it's very small, very different. If I go to my other one here, it's kind of more faded out, but still there. For this case in particular, I'm going to play with no loot filter on, because you may be going without one. I have a couple videos on how to download loot filters and that sort of stuff. I think it's even in my beginner's guide. Okay, so I'll be playing with no loot filter for the whole time until we reach endgame and, you know, I can kind of start explaining things. But let's actually start playing the game now, shall we? One other thing I like to do personally is take my wisdom scrolls and put them in this spot. That's just personal because it lets you do things a little bit faster and maneuver a little faster. I'm also going to tailor that towards my keybinds. Okay, so I'm going to skip all tutorials because I am your tutorial. So now we open my inventory and I have a driftwood club. This has 2 sockets in it. This will become relevant in about 3 seconds. If you talk to the dying exile right here, he will get eaten and we will beat this man to death with our hefty right click. And he'll do a little speech for us. Alright, now we get our first skill gem of Path of Exile. We get Heavy Strike, a skill that I tried to make a build around and it didn't really pan out. Alright, now when we put that in, it will go into our first available slot on our skill bar. My recommendation, get that shit out of here and put it on your right click. This is now a right click activatable skill that will cost mana. Very simple. Now if you look at the skill itself, we can see a few different things. That is kind of a nuance to Path of Exile. Is attacks the enemy with a forceful blow, I'm reading the green text, knocking them back, so we know the skill has knockback to it. It also is a weapon requirement based skill, so you can only use this with a mace, axe, sword, or two-handed weapon. Anything else is a no-go in regards to Heavy Strike. This is going to be different depending on each skill, so this means it can't be used with unarmed, for example, so you can't use a Facebreaker pair, which is a pair of gloves that boosts your damage. Think of them like knuckle dusters or something, right? Along those lines. That means they can't be used with that. There's certain skills that are like, one we'll come across very soon, which is Ground Slam, which you can only use with a mace and an axe. You can't use it with a sword, right? So when you're coming across new skills and tailoring your character towards them or trying new things, if you try and right click with it and you're like, okay, why can't I attack? Maybe you have the wrong weapon type. Take a look. Okay, now one other thing I want to explain very quickly over here is 25% reduced enemy stun threshold. This threw me for a fucking loop when I read it the first time. It essentially just means 25% chance to stun on hit. I know. They couldn't have just written that. It's just really weird. Combined with the Driftwood Club, we have 35% because of the implicit on the weapon, but I'll get into that in a later time. And coffee is very, very good. Alright, because we're in for the long haul, so I figured. Yeah, other than that, it has knockback, and it's pretty self-explanatory. So let's make our way down the beach very slowly, because I have no movement speed increases, but we will make our way down. Now, me personally, for the sake of speed, I'm going to be trying to keep this both as fast and as informative as possible, because I don't like editing large blocks of content personally, but I wanted to keep it as informational as possible. If you stick to the beach, well, the beach of the beach, I suppose, you'll come across your large chest. This will give you a support gem. Now, these things are very, very useful and can make or break your build. I'll be explaining these very heavily in depth later on because, as I said, it can make or break a build. Now, with this one precisely, it does a few different things. This makes it so that every third attack, or every third time you use your supported attack, it does 75% more melee damage. Now, I'm gonna do the whole more versus increased discussion. If you've heard this before, feel free to skip ahead. Now, for those of you wondering, you will come across a lot of skill gems in the game, so I want to put this out as soon as possible for me being able to just reference it back at the start. Now, the thing I'm going to say is that when you come across a more multiplier or a more modifier on a skill gem or an item or that sort of thing, it is multiplicative, so it multiplies with other modifiers. If you come across something that says anything other than that, if it says like increased or added or that sort of thing, it doesn't multiply with other modifiers like this. Added might, don't quote me on that, but like increased doesn't multiply, especially when it comes to skill gems. So if you're ever wondering like, what do I put in my 3 or 4 link item, go for anything with, say, more melee damage, more cold damage, more whatever the hell you're doing, right? Because that will multiply with other more bonuses. So in this case, I have 75% more on my third hit. If I were to take, say, later on down the line, more melee fizz, which gives me, say, 35%, just flat before I level it up, then that will multiply with each other. So it's not like 110%, it's like, I don't know, 130% or something like that. I don't know the exact math, but that's the way it ends up working. So essentially, it's a set it and forget it, especially with Ruthless support, unless you're playing a very, very niche build. Now you can kill whatever you'd like to, but of course, for the sake of time, I'm going to run my way to the very end boss, because if I can do maybe an act or two of it, not two, there's no way I can do two, but if I can do like an act of video, at least for the first little bit, I'll be very proud of myself. So we're going to beat the boss to death here with our right-clicked heavy strike, as I'm apparently lagging a little bit, but all you really need to do to take him down is keep your life flasks and your mana flask kind of ticking. You can alternate both of them, and you should be fine. Let's kill these crabs so they don't annoy us. And we get our first little bundle of loot. Now this is going to be different depending on just RNG, right? There's RNG pretty much everywhere in Path of Exile. But with this being said, I'm going to grab a few things, or well, in our case, I guess we can really grab everything to start. Normally I pick things out of there if I really care, but in this case, we need pretty much everything. So we're going to come our little way up here, go into Lion's Eye Watch, and we're going to come in here, like so, close out your tooltips and stuff, and we have a couple of things to do in here before we can get to some of the other stuff. We're going to talk to Tarkly, and we're going to grab our first skill gem. Now, you can choose either one, but in my case that I'm going to be going for, I'm going to be taking Ground Slam, for the reason of it is purely more optimal. We're going to grab that, like so, and then we'll complete our first quest. Alright, so now we're going to have a few things to do now that we've gotten our first skill gem and we have our first skill point. So first off, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this second Driftwood Club that I've got, throw it in my second spare slot here, and then I'm going to press X, because that is going to switch me to a different weapon set. Now, the reason I'm doing this is that these gems themselves have their own level. You can see that XP bar there. I'm pointing to it in real life, but you can't really see me do that. It's about right here. You can see that it has the XP bar, Now, if you have the skill gem equipped in a non-equipped weapon slot, it will actually still keep leveling. You can do this for any skill you would like. In our case, we're going to probably do it for our Ruthless support, because we don't have a setup that lets us use it with a two-handed weapon at the moment. However, I'm going to hopefully find one if I can, but we're just going to press X, it'll switch it, and we're going to put in a two-handed weapon. Because a two-handed weapon with ground slam, as I was talking about earlier, where our ground slam only works with stabs, axes, or maces, will do a ton of work for us. We're going to slot that into here. Now, you may not actually have a two-handed weapon. That is perfectly fine, because since we picked up everything, we can do some stuff with that. If you were to come over to Tarkly and say purchase items, you can see that he has weapons available. So, in our case, we can take this Driftwood Maul right here, which is 1 Wisdom Scroll, because it has a 2 red link, which means if we close this out, we can put in our Ground Slam, switch weapon sets, and then grab out our Ruthless Support and slam it in there. Now we replace that, and we can sell all of our extra useless stuff. Now the reason this is useless is because this is just extra white stuff, and blue items are meant to be identified, but we are really hurting on identification scrolls at the moment, because we have of course just started the game, so we can sell them to the vendor to get some scrolls and transmutation shards. Okay, now we're gonna see if there's anything notable that we can buy. There's a few chess pieces, which maybe. We're going to take a look at boots and look for, hopefully, a pair of movement speed boots would be quite nice. What you can actually do in this scenario is you can type in movement, and it will highlight, excuse me while I move very quickly, it'll highlight whatever you are looking for. In this case, if I could get a pair of movement speed boots, it would very, very much so increase my movement speed and clear speed. Sadly, no luck here, but I recommend you do this, and if you actually get a pair of boots, grab them and throw them on here for at least a little bit to speed your life up just that tad bit. Now, I could buy a chess piece, but one thing I will tell you about a chess piece is it actually slows you down. I don't remember exactly by how much, but a plate vest will slow you down quite a bit if you throw it on. Now, of course, we're going in the sake of speed at the moment, albeit I'm explaining things a lot, so speed is a very debatable point. Now you can go around town, talk to people, get all your quests, and you shall be good to go. This is a very important quest, so make sure you grab this one, because it will be very, very useful. Alright, our first skill point. Those of you have probably seen the very, very large passive skill tree that is actually hiding ascendancies, which adds even more stuff to it. It is a very large tree, but for the moment, I am going to make things very, very simple for you, because if we're playing Marauder, and you are playing Marauder, we're going to take the bottom node for life and armor here, because life is the solution to every single problem in Path of Exile. So we're going to grab that point right there, and you're going to see your life total go up by quite a bit. This is why I said to turn this on, because you can watch your health pool increase exponentially, and you can watch multiplications and that sort of stuff. Because notice how this node is plus 16 to maximum life, and this next node is 5% increased maximum life. These multiply on top of each other. So that plus 16, once you eventually get, say, 200% increased maximum life, that plus 16 becomes, if it's like, what, 200%? It becomes plus 32 maximum life. Even though it doesn't say so on the node, it does, because of math and multiplication and etc, etc. So, yeah, it becomes very, very interesting. Okay, now we've done pretty much everything here. We've got our Ground Slam, we have our Driftwood Maul, and we are ready to set out into the wild wasteland that is Path of Exile. Hopefully we can get some good loot, hopefully I can explain a few things, and we can get this show on the road. As he gives us our nice little speech here. I wonder how many times I'm going to instinctually press my movement speed keys, because there's something we're going to get very soon that allows us to go very, very quickly, which I highly recommend you do. Now, how much stuff you kill here at the start is up to you. I generally don't like to kill too much. I know some people who will just run through the entire area. If I was speed leveling, I would probably be in the second area already. That's just kind of how fast I like to go personally. But it all depends. Of course, you're going to go at a rather slow pace and go zone by zone. So just kind of take it slow. Take it a little bit carefully. And make sure you don't end up in a situation you really can't handle. So you'll see over here that I am getting click to level up right here. Now, I can explain a couple of things with this, which is essentially that your gems level up. When you level them up, a few things happen. Notice how my gems, they don't have a like requirement right now, but certain gems at higher levels will have a requirement. And this will actually lock you out from using them sometimes. If you level up a dex gem, one too high of a level, and you don't have that amount of dexterity, once you take off whatever's giving you the benefit, it will lock it away, and thus you can't use it anymore. So you need to be very careful with that. Now with these pop-ups on the right-hand side, generally it's good to just click through them all and you're fine, right? Auto level up gems would be much appreciated. But there's a few things you can do with this sort of system here, other than just left click it. You can left click it to level it up, like so, but if there's one on the right side of your screen that says you can't level it up and it's just sat there, you can right click on it and it'll disappear. Now, if you want to level it up again afterwards, you can open up your inventory and you can find it right down here. This is the gem that I hid away. You can hide that one away. Say I want to level up the two of them. You come right down here and we just double click on that, or just click on it, and it will level up whatever you were looking to level, or whatever you wanted to hide. This is exceptionally useful for later game builds, when you go in and you have things you don't want to over level because it ends up screwing things up. There's a few things we'll be messing around with later on, which is called, say, cast when damage taken. So you take damage and something happens. Now, if you have that linked to a spell to happen, and you over level the spell out of the range of the cast when damage taken gem, it'll no longer cast. So you want to make sure that you don't end up screwing yourself over with that sort of situation. So we made our way into the title island. You can see that very clearly up there. And this is where we can find the boss for our quest. Now we're looking for a medicine chest, which is on a very lethal to new players boss, because he can kill you very, very quickly if you're not paying attention. Path of Exile is a game that will destroy you if you're not actually semi-attentive. Let's make sure to grab that as well, because there's a lot of shenanigansy mechanics that will just kill you. So be very, very careful. If you see anything with reflect, like fizz reflect or elemental reflect, keep an eye out for those, because otherwise you will just die. So I'm sure you can see why ground slam is a whole lot better than heavy strike, whereas heavy strike would be hitting target by target. Here I can hit anything in the cone of ground slam, solving a lot of my problems very quickly and allowing me to kill groups and groups of enemies. Alright, here is our boss. Now, we do have a little bit of range with ground slam, so we can try and keep him at bay just a little bit. Keep him away from us out of melee range, and allow us to dodge his little spike attack there. And we should be able to kill him in a reasonable time, hopefully. Now, as you can see with ground slam, he's occasionally getting the little, like, what is it, the arrows over his head, the, like, swirly thing over his head. That essentially means that you stunned him for a little bit of time, because ground slam has a stun property to it, just like I was talking about with heavy strike. Okay, so I did want to equip some gear before we actually got into fighting him, but he just kind of showed up as I was talking, so I rolled with it. But we do have some gear that I am going to put on. I'm going to put the shoes on, I'm going to put the gloves on, and I'm going to put on the necklace. Now the necklace is going to be very, very useful for us at early levels. These sorts of things will phase out as you get higher and higher in level, and we'll start talking about gear and that sort of thing. But for now, make sure you try and fill pretty much every slot. At the moment, I was waiting for a better chest piece to get, because keep in mind this one is green, green, green. Marauder, as a character, uses mostly red unless you're building differently, or you're using certain skill gems later on. So the more red you have on Marauder, the more it actually becomes available to you as you level. You can test around more stuff, you can do more link setups and shenanigans. So I'm going to grab that one and put that on yield and chest piece. We're going to grab our medicine chest right there. I'm going to grab this rustic sash, as well as, let's grab the medium mana flask and the portal scroll. Okay, so now we get our first belt, and I get one of the better-ish belts for leveling. We're going to identify that, right click your Scroll of Wisdom, left click on this, and we got +9 armor. Now, Global Fizz is a modifier that will increase your physical damage just kind of across the board for any sort of skill that uses physical damage. It's not the best belt. I would have preferred a plus max life belt, but it's something, and we're playing solo self-found, so I will take it. Now, if you want to see the exact damage increase, this is going to be highly debated in the comment section. The exact-ish damage increase. You can mouse over your ability, for in my case, Ground Slam, and you can see its DPS is 15.6. If I take the belt off, it goes down to 12.9. You don't even have to put it in your inventory. You can just pick it up with left click, and you'll see the DPS number changes. Okay, so I'm going to show you a few different things here. We entered the Mud Flats, which is right beside Tidal Island. Now, I'm going to show you something that's going to boggle your mind, because it definitely did it for me the first time that I played through things, which is that you see this quest icon over here. Now, if I wanted to get the quest for this, I could go back to town, talk to Tarkly, and he would give me a pop-up on the right side that would say, go to the Mud Flats and find these eggs, right? Or, alternatively, if I already know the quest route and the quest path, I can go along and do the quest already. This is assuming I go in the correct order of the game. I don't actually have to talk to quest people. The first time I heard this, I was very, very confused. So, for example, I didn't actually have to talk to Bestel at the start of the game if I didn't want to. I did that for, of course, tutorial purposes. I could have just grabbed my weapons, ran out the door, ran to Tidal Island, and killed Hailrake, and he would have dropped the medicine chest, and then I would have had the pop-up to travel back to town. So, when it comes to later into the game, if you start learning the paths and you don't feel like clicking the quests anymore, you don't have to. I like it because it's just what my brain decides is instinctually correct, so it's gonna probably end up happening, even though it may be like less optimal. Okay, now I have two other things that I can explain right here. As I said, I'm going in on pretty much everything whole hog. Now, I explained how blue items worked before, so we're going to identify this and see what we get. That's okay. Elemental damage with attack skills doesn't really do anything for me at the moment, but what it does do is it gives me a third red link right here, and it has higher physical damage. Okay, now when you're analyzing weapons and choosing out which weapon to use, there's a few things to look at. In our case here, we're playing a physical damage based build, so we want what hits the fucking hardest, right? We want to hit like a freight train. And in our case, kill packs and like 1 to 2 ground slams. Which means that base physical damage at the top is going to be the primary thing I'm going to be looking at when switching out weapons. One other thing to keep in mind though is attacks per second, which is how fast you swing the weapon and how many ground slams you can get out. This weapon is a 1.3 attack speed. This weapon is also a 1.3 attack speed. I thought it was 1.2, which is why I brought it up, but I get to eat my own words. Wonderful. But yeah, so the physical damage on this weapon is a lot higher. It's 10 to 17 as a damage range, so you could hit anywhere in between that, versus this 9 to 13 here, which is more consistent, but it is overall lower than the base of the axe here. So we're going to throw our ground slam and our ruthless support in there. You can take stuff just out and put it in different weapons while that weapon is still equipped. And we're just going to click that in, and huzzah, our weapon changes, and our DPS goes up just that slight little bit. Now, one other thing I'm going to show you is weapon quality, which you can see right here. I got a superior stone axe. This is 11% quality. Now, quality goes up to 20% normally. With league modifiers, which I said I wasn't going to get into, it can go up to 30% based on an item in one of the leagues. Alright, now the thing about this is a quality modifier will modify the base properties of an item. So in this case, it modifies the physical damage. If I were to use quality on a piece of armor, for example, it would just up the armor or the energy shield value or the evasion value, whatever the primary part of it is. Now, why do you want a quality stuff? Other than just increasing base physical damage and stuff, it also increases your chance to get better sockets to link things easier. Notice how this item has a link here, but this one doesn't, because each item comes with a randomly generated set of links. Could be perfect for you, could not be perfect for you. It could be complete trash, but it could be fully linked but the wrong colors. There's currencies that will allow you to change these and fix things as you end up going. Of course, we don't have any yet, but when I come across some, I will most definitely show you. Now, other than just your base bonuses, it will allow you to link stuff and get what's called a fabled 6-link item, which is essentially you have 6 sockets and then 6 links on the item. I've had a few, but none that are really amazingly top tier or notable. There are some items that will come as a base 6-link, but those are generally unique items that you use for leveling or for a certain type of build or that sort of stuff. But if you're trying to get 6 sockets and 6 links on an item, then having it at 20% quality will be the way to go, because that increases your chances of getting exactly what you're aiming for. Now, the way you quality an item is you find a blacksmith's whetstone for weaponry, or you find a armorer's scrap for armor and shields and that sort of stuff. Alright, so we're going to level up our gems. I explained that beforehand. And do I want a gnarled branch? Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take one with me. Because if I get a transmutation orb or a piece of currency, we can create our own weapon upgrade right there. Now, one last thing to touch on in the quality department is that each rarity quality is at a different amount. I know there's a lot to learn. I promise you we'll go through it as a team. So if I were to quality a white item, like say the one that I have in my inventory right now, yielding 11% quality, since it's a white item, it'll go up at 5% quality per piece. Here's a blacksmith's whetstone, perfectly on cue. You can't even script that. If I were to put it on this, it would go up by 5% quality. It's now 16%. If I were to put that on my blue axe, it would only go up by 2%. 2 or 4% or something like that. It degrades as you go higher. So for rare, it's like 1%, and unique, it's 1%. If I remember entirely correctly. So if you're crafting your own item, it's best to, It's best to make sure it's like a white item, start with that, quality it to maximum, and then start rolling on it, etc, etc. Okay, now up in the mud flats, or not in the mud flats, in the fetid pool up here, you can do a side quest if you want to. Side quests in Path of Exile are kind of a waste of time, if I'm entirely honest with you. There's very certain side quests that are worth your time, like one that'll be coming up very, very soon, that will give you a skill point. Now, those are the only side quests that really become notable. Anything other than that is not really worth it. But you can, of course, do them on your first time if you would like to. We're coming into a zone boss. There is one to each zone in Path of Exile. That was Uzbek Blossom, very famous for being punched to death in a what's called a Gucci hobo run. Essentially, you're not allowed to use any items except uniques. It's just something someone did for a laugh, and they punched that boss to death over and over and over for hours on end until we finally got a legendary stick. Alright, we're going to walk up here, click on here once we get all 3 of the glyphs, and we're going to make our way through the submerged passage. Okay. Now, if we come up here, we'll see a waypoint. We can click on this. And from here, we can go back to any place that we have a waypoint in previously. We have one on the coast. We have one in town. You will always have one in town, but you can miss them depending where you go. These 2 don't have any waypoints. So, we're just going to go back to town to turn our quests in. Now, while you can do quests on the run, you do have to go back to town to turn them in. It's not all new age technology. Alright, so turning into Tarkly, we can grab a few different things. We can get Decoy Totem, Molten Shell, Ancestral Protector, or Vigilant Strike. Now in this case, I'm going to take Ancestral Protector, because I will show you why when I get to actually use the spell when we go out into the game yet again. This is what I was talking about. He gave you the quest A Dirty Job, which is to kill all the monsters in that upper area that I just showed you previously. Now, I'm not going to do that for the sake of time and for the sake of it just being an extra thing that can give you extra loot, and it doesn't give you a skill point. Skill point quests are notable and worthwhile. Anything else, bottom tier of the list. I don't even do it, in my opinion. Okay, now when we talk to Nessa, we get a glorious Quicksilver Flask. And you can press this over and over and over. Now, flasks refill whenever you kill a monster, so this allows you to clear very quickly and be more efficient. She also gives you access to another set of skill gems here. We have Chance to Bleed, which has added fizz to weapons, chance to bleed, more bleed damage, so no more melee fizz like I was talking about earlier. But then we have Ancestral Call. This is a quite good skill gem if you were to take Molten Strike at the start. It's very, very good. But as you can see on underneath it, you can see that little box of active skills. You can see there's an X through Ground Slam and a plus to Heavy Strike, or like a check mark under Heavy Strike. This means that this skill gem will not affect Ground Slam. This was recently added and is a top tier feature for having a question of like, oh, does this work? You don't have to buy it to figure it out. You should look at the box and it'll say, oh no, it doesn't work with this, or it works with this, etc, etc. Very amazing, underrated feature that when I saw this on 3.4 patch day, I was like, oh yes, I need this in my life. So in this case, we're gonna grab Onslaught. This is a green gem, so if we level it up too much, it will cost dexterity that we don't have, and we'll end up over leveling it. I'm gonna probably do that purposefully at one point, just to show you a couple of ways to fix that problem. But in this case, it makes it so supported skills, or whatever you link this to, has a chance to grant Onslaught on dealing a killing blow. Onslaught gives you attack speed, movement speed, and cast speed. So we're getting the trifecta of speed clear. We're getting a chance at movement speed on kill, we're getting movement speed that refills on kill. You see why this thing starts to get very fast, very enjoyable, very quickly. Okay. Now, with that being said, we got kind of screwed over because I can't link it into my axe, right? Because this is green. Green doesn't fit into red. Now, what I can do is I have a few separate options. I can, if I wanted to, I can put Ancestral Protector, one of the skills that I got before, which is a totem, into a different link. I can put it, say, in there, and then I can put that in there with it, and you can see it'll link up to it. But the thing is I'm pretty sure that this will make it so that it gives the totem Onslaught on kill, and not me. I've never actually done this link setup before, so we can actually experiment live while I'm doing this and see what ends up happening. But what would be optimal is to link that to my Ground Slam, so I slam and then it gives me my movement speed, and I can keep up at a decent pace. I'm going to sell all of this, so that keeps a Gnarled Branch, and no, I have other stuff that could be used for an upgrade instead. And upon selling those, we are able to get a nice Wisdom Scroll back and be good to go. Now, one other thing I wanted to talk about is now that we've completed some quests, you saw that we had an opportunity to get skill gems, right? What happens if you pick the wrong one? Is it gone forever? No, it's not. If you come to whoever the mage vendor is in your current town, in our case it's Nessa, and you go to our second tab, after you've completed quests, you will see every possible skill gem for your class that would have been available, and some extra ones unlocked as well. You can see I have Fireball here. I never got to choose Fireball. I don't know how this is decided on what you can choose and use and stuff, but it allows you to get some different skill gems or some different stuff if you want to mess around and experiment. You can also get different support gems. I wasn't able to choose Volley Support just because it doesn't work with anything and because it wasn't available at the time. But if you want to mess around and see some other stuff, you can click in here and take a look. You can get like Flame Totem, which is a pretty fun skill and I like building around it, and just some other stuff. If you missed out on support gems or you want to double up, you can take those too. Say that you went Molten Strike and you want to get Volley Support for your Molten Strike, and you want Ancestral Call, which is something I would very much so recommend, then you can come and get both of those in here. Thanks for making it to the end of my video. If you enjoyed it, take a look at the 2 pieces of content you're seeing on screen right now. If you wouldn't mind, you can click that big red button and see more updates from me. And if you want to go even further than that, then you can take a look in the description to find my new Patreon link. You boys gotta keep the lights on somehow.